A man stood atop a mountain of corpses that he himself had created, and when another man approached, he asked what he was doing there, since he had sent him to the Eastern Front. The other replied that he had returned to defeat him. Ash Aster was injured, but even so, he made it clear that from the beginning he had planned to use that entire army as bait. He confirmed that the weak exist exactly for that, and called his own son an idiot. Ash Aster Elmheim was part of the Elmheim family, the most powerful house in martial matters across the entire continent. It was a family that had protected royalty for generations, and its leader, Roderick Elmheim, was considered the strongest man in the nation. He was the one who found Ash Aster as a baby, alone in a snowy field, on the verge of death, and decided to save him. Since then, in order to repay that, Ash Aster did everything he was ordered to do, even if the path was cruel and heavy. He grew up being mocked by everyone, always weaker than the others. They said he was wingless, unlike his father. The mark of the wings, the Elmheim tattoo, carried immense magical power, and the more wings someone had, the greater their ability. Even Ash Aster's own siblings said he was the only one in the Duke's house who could not use magic. Even as a wingless person, he kept training and wielding his sword, believing that his devotion would be rewarded one day. But when he was sent to the Eastern Front, he fell into an ambush. After that, he returned to his father and questioned everything, saying that he had followed every order and believed in him all this time. In response, Roderick asked what a tool could expect, since its purpose was only to serve the family, and told him to get out of the way before he was killed. Even so, Ash Aster attacked his own father, driven by pain and disappointment, but his strike only left a superficial cut on Roderick's neck, which he did not even care about. Soon after, two knights who always stayed in the leader's shadows appeared and restrained Ash Aster, tearing off his arms. One of them even mocked him, saying that a wingless person would always be wingless, and that crawling like that suited him perfectly. Ash Aster asked why they had not finished him off already, since it seemed that everything had been decided from the beginning. Then Roderick revealed that he had never had any interest in him as a person, and that he had never been useful. The only reason was the power of the 7 wings within his body, inherited from his mother, who had only been useful for giving him what he needed. Upon hearing that, Ash Aster tried to react, filled with anger, but he was finished right there, dying in the cold, alone. In his final moments, he remembered when he was just a baby, almost freezing to death in the snow, feeling the exact same cold that now took over his body. Suddenly, a small snowflake fell on his nose, and he sneezed. When he opened his eyes, he realized he was alive. His body felt weak, small, like that of a child. Beside him was a dead woman. Soon voices echoed in the distance, like a magical message being transmitted, saying that they needed to find that woman at any cost, that she could not have gone far in that storm, and that for Roderick's sake it was necessary to capture both her and the child. Upon hearing Roderick's name, Ash Aster realized they were looking for him. He remembered that when he had been found in the past, he was in the middle of the snow, freezing to death. The possibility of having returned to the past seemed absurd, but he had no choice but to try to survive. With the little power he still had, he melted the snow around him and began to crawl away from the woman's body. He could barely breathe, and his limbs were almost rotting from the cold, but he kept going. Sometime later, with the sun shining on his face, he was found by a child and her father. The man was Viscount Highfried, who wondered how a child could be in such a hostile place. When he picked Ash Aster up, he noticed the path the baby had traveled alone and was impressed. Ash Aster, still confused, saw a child with an angelic appearance in front of him, but then took a punch to the face and fully woke up. Other children began to pull him, while the older one, the one who had helped rescue him, tried to protect him. Using the little power he had, Ash Aster tried to escape, but he was thrown into the air by a spell and ended up falling straight into Viscount Highfried's arms. At that moment, he recognized who that man was. Highfried Elmheim was Roderick's older brother and the leader of the Viscounty, responsible for the branch house of the Elmheim family. In the past, he had been one of the twin wings alongside Roderick, tasked with protecting the royal family. But the Highfried that Ash Aster knew had died during a civil war, along with the collapse of the Viscount's house. Now Ash Aster was certain that he had returned to the past, but it was ironic to think that he had tried to escape from Roderick only to end up falling into the hands of his brother. The woman holding Ash Aster asked if the child's magic had gone out of control and made him fly through the sky, and Highfried confirmed it, saying that from the beginning he knew the child was not ordinary. She then spoke gently, saying that everything was fine now, and that he was safe, as the two of them carefully took care of him. The Viscount commented that the child had impressive power, and that the mark on his back was proof of it. Then he revealed that Ash Aster carried the mark of the 7 wings on his back. Upon hearing that, Ash Aster remembered the moment of his own death, and finally connected everything. In his previous life, Roderick had rescued him only to steal the power of the 7 wings, and afterward he began calling him wingless in front of everyone. The woman asked what they would do with that child, and Ash Aster realized the situation was dangerous. That power could not fall into the hands of the Elmheim again, because now he needed it for his revenge. Then Highfried declared that he would take that child as his adopted son. He said that he was still just a newborn who could not fly with his own wings, and that he would take responsibility for him until he could leave the territory of Ning. Upon hearing that, Ash Aster was deeply moved, because in his previous life he had never had a real father. Suddenly the door opened, and several children fell over while listening from behind it. Highfried asked if they had been listening to the conversation, and the oldest replied that she was worried about him. him. One of the children asked what the baby's name would be, and the woman suggested Ash Aster, the name of the new star that had been born into the family. 10 years passed, and Highfried was heading to an important engagement, accompanied by his son Ash Aster. He helped his sister Alphen step down from the carriage, and the two followed their father to a great annual event called the Sword Dance. The gathering was organized by a ducal house under the banner of the Elmheim and served as a social meeting between noble warrior families. There, the young could strengthen alliances or create rivalries, while the leaders displayed the talent of the children who would become the next great fighters. As soon as they arrived, the whispers began. Many commented that Highfried had learned nothing, and still brought with him that adopted boy of unknown origin. They said he was staining the name of the Elmheim. Alphen held herself back from reacting, but Highfried maintained his composure, and said that this was his current position, and that he wanted everyone to see the situation as it was. He asked his children if they were disappointed, and Ash Aster, the name by which Ash Aster was now known, replied that he was not, that in fact he liked that kind of reception. In his past life, Ash Aster had been the disgrace of the Elmheim family, and suffered the worst kind of social pressure possible. That place held bitter memories of defeats and humiliation. But now, with the Seven Wings intact, he was someone different. He observed other young people peeking through the windows of the great castle, and felt that he was ready to face any challenge. He wanted to make a much better entrance than in his previous life. Later, two young men were fighting in an arena, and everyone explained that in an era where knights dominated the world, it was necessary to demonstrate worth with splendor and power. Power came from swordsmanship, and splendor came from fame. The fight reached its peak when one of them covered his blade with an aura and brought down his opponent. That represented the peak of a swordsman, the absolute symbol that granted strength, the crest of the wings. Watching the end of the fight, Alphen commented that that place was still intimidating, and that it was no wonder the sisters had not come. Ash Aster recalled his life as Ash Aster when he lost miserably in that same arena and was humiliated in front of everyone. Alphen asked if he was nervous, since it was his first time at the sword dance. He replied that he was not that nervous, and thought that in truth, for him it was almost nostalgic. Shortly after, Highfried informed his children that he needed to attend a conference for a moment, and asked Ash Aster to take care of Alphen. She replied indignantly that she was older than him, but their father explained that there were many young people his age there, and that he could take the opportunity to build connections, as long as no one discovered about the Seven Wings. When Highfried walked away, Ash Aster thought the advice was good, but that the atmosphere was too hostile to easily form friendships. Even so, disobeying the order to watch over Alphen, Ash Aster decided to walk away, saying that he would make some friends. He approached a group of nobles who seemed arrogant and unfriendly. One of them asked who he was, and Ash Aster formally introduced himself to Darius, saying that he was Ash Aster Elmheim, his younger brother, and that he had seen him from afar when he arrived, so he decided to greet him. Another young man beside him commented in a low voice that he was the adopted boy that Viscount had brought into the family. Darius replied that he understood and even found it amusing that the boy had the courage to show up there like that. He and Grian were precisely the two who had killed Ash Aster in his past life. Back then, they seemed like terrifying hunters, impossible figures to face, but now Ash Aster only saw two children pretending to be strong. Alphen grabbed his arm and asked him to leave, saying it was not worth staying near them. Darius then provoked Alphen, asking if she was there too, and if she did not intend to step out from behind her father. He said it was an order from the main house that she approach, but she refused because the branch family did not have a master and servant relationship with the main house. Even so, Darius continued, saying that their father, despite being a knight, had failed to protect the king, and that as punishment, he had his arm cut off by his own younger brother. He called it a humiliation, and added that at least he did not carry the blood of a loser. Alphen demanded that he take those words back, but when she stepped closer, Darius took the opportunity to spit what seemed like wine on her, saying that only useless girls kept being born in the Viscount's family, and that it must be a great disappointment. He even suggested that next time she should wear rags so she would not dirty her dress. On the way there, Ash Aster had been worried, thinking he might lose control upon seeing those faces again, but he realized he was calm and even grateful for having that chance. He grabbed one of the bottles and threw it at Darius, cutting it in half with his sword and splashing the liquid over him. Then he tasted it and realized it was just grape juice, which made him think they were still just children. 3 years earlier, Ash Aster could barely control the power of the Seven Wings. It was far too explosive for a child's body, to the point that he had attacked his own sisters when he lost control of his mind. Highfried realized that this was the true burden of the Seven Wings, and admitted that not even he knew if he could fully master that power, but he believed that by training his son, they could learn to control it together. Suddenly, a messenger interrupted the conference of the family leaders to report that the children of the main house and the branch house were fighting. When the Viscount left the room, he was met by Alphen, but he did not even need to hear an explanation, as another leader commented that a fight between the Elmheim would make the sword dance even more intense. In the arena, Darius wielded 2 swords and displayed his wing mark, revealing 4 complete wings. The crowd was impressed, as that was a completely different level. He mocked Ash Aster, asking why he did not show his own wings, and whether he was ashamed. Ash Aster replied that he had no interest in displaying power to please any audience, and that it was ridiculous. But he made it clear that if he won there, Darius would have to apologize to Alphen. His cousin agreed, but but imposed that if he lost, Ash Aster would become his servant. Darius attacked first, and as Ash Aster blocked, he felt his hand tremble slightly. The following strikes came fast and heavy, while Darius said that this was the power of 4 wings, and that he would never understand it. Alphen began to worry, and one of the adults commented that Darius's swordsmanship was still immature, but among the young it would be difficult for anyone to defeat him with the advantage of 4 wings, comparing each wing to a flame, and the 4 together to an explosion. As he kept pressing, Darius asked where all of Ash Aster's courage had gone, demanding that he show real power. When he launched an attack with both blades, many thought the fight was decided, but Ash Aster easily blocked using his aura and replied that he talked too much. At that moment, he decided to truly release the power he had spent 10 years trying to control, all with the goal of achieving his revenge, and the first step was defeating Darius. The pressure from Ash Aster's blade was so heavy that even while blocking, Darius was forced to his knees. He could barely hold his 2 swords as he insisted that he had 4 wings and would win, but the blades began to crack just from the weight of his opponent's power. The people around were in shock, asking what was happening, as they had never imagined that someone in the Elmheim family possessed such power, and they could clearly see that Darius was being crushed in front of everyone. The problem began when a bit of dark magic was released along with Ash Aster's attack. Highfried realized immediately that it was dangerous, and grew concerned. The energy made Ash Aster lose control for a moment, and he remembered his own arm being torn off by Darius in his past life. The anger surged, and he almost let all his power escape. A massive explosion of light fell over the arena, but at the last second, Highfried shouted for him to control himself. Because of that, the strike ended up only breaking Darius's blades, and he became so terrified that he wet himself right there. Ash Aster calmly said that maybe it would be better for him to wear rags next time, so he would not get himself wet again, and then he sheathed his sword in silence. Alphen felt relieved, because now she could see that Ash Aster was no longer the old wingless Ash Aster. He could finally use his true power. However, he felt someone watching him with a suffocating pressure, and an intense bloodlust. It was Roderick, leader of the Elmheim family, staring directly at the boy. When the dust settled, people began to comment that they did not know someone so powerful existed in the family, especially coming from the branch house. At the same time, they said that this would not go unpunished, and that Darius would not let it go. Then Roderick stepped forward. Darius ran to him and accused Ash Aster, saying that the boy had dared to challenge him and asked his father to teach him a lesson. But instead of attacking Ash Aster, Roderick drew his sword and drove it into his own son's hand right where the wing mark was. He asked if Darius did not understand that he had dragged the family name through the mud, and declared that anyone who could not take revenge with their own strength did not deserve to wield a sword. Highfried tried to stop him, but the one who actually stepped into the path of the blade was Ash Aster, saying that he could not kill Darius because he had not yet apologized to Alphen, and asked that the punishment be left for later. Roderick asked if he was not just a boy adopted by Highfried, and whether he truly believed he was part of the Elmheim family. Ash Aster replied that he was the Viscount's son even without blood ties, and that he was a proud knight of that house. Roderick then stated that, as a member of the Viscount's house, he had damaged the reputation of the main house, which led 12,000 knights under the banner and sword of the king, and that this could not be treated as a simple children's quarrel. Highfried offered his own arm as the price for any disloyalty, but asked what Ash Aster would offer. With respect, Ash Aster declared that it had been an official and legitimate duel, that he had only responded to Darius's insults, and repeated the very words that had been said before, that anyone who could not take revenge with their own strength did not deserve to wield a sword. He made it clear that he would not back down there. One of the leaders murmured in surprise whether that boy was really only 10 years old. Roderick remained silent for a moment, then said that he understood. He sheathed his sword and ordered Ash Aster to draw his. In the next instant, he delivered an extremely powerful strike that sent the boy flying. Highfried protested and tried to block his brother from behind, but even so, he managed to defend the blow. He ran to Ash Aster and asked if he was alright. The boy was standing, with his sword destroyed, but he had managed to block the attack. After that test, Roderick simply turned his back and left with his son. Ash Aster nearly collapsed from exhaustion, and asked his father if he had fulfilled his promise to protect his sister. Highfried replied that he had, that he was magnificent. As they walked away, one of the leaders commented that it had been childish, but that if they had let the boy say whatever he wanted, the family's reputation could have been ruined. In the end, it was a reasonable outcome, because Ash Aster had faced Grand Duke Roderick himself, made bold declarations, and still survived. Many began to see him as a promising newcomer, a rising star, and said that he could not have had a better social debut. Another leader commented that it could split the Elmheim in two, but Roderick replied that the age of revolt was approaching, a storm great enough to divide the world into 2 or 3 parts, and that they would then see what that boy was truly capable of. Later, during training, Ash Aster began to impress everyone by defeating even older veterans. They commented that it was frightening that he was only 10 years old and already possessed such skill. Another said that since returning from the sword dance gathering, he had been training non-stop, as if preparing for something much greater. People said that it must have been a huge motivation for Ash Aster, and rumors spread that he had defeated Roderick's third son, which pleased many, as if the main family was finally tasting its own poison. Moving on to the next duel unusual in training. Ash Aster thought that at the sword dance he had shown enough power and presence for a good social debut, enough to at least reduce some of the rumors that called the Viscount's house a disgrace to the family. Even so, his true target was not the Elmheim. Deep down he had wanted to test his limits at that gathering, but he knew that, as he was now, there was no way he could defeat Roderick. He understood that the wings were only indicators of the amount of hidden magical power someone possessed, and that even innate magic was wasted if the person did not know how to use it. Ash Aster himself still could not draw out the full power of the 7 wings, and he wanted to test that limit to the maximum without worrying about the consequences. While reflecting on this, he defeated yet another opponent on the training field. When he looked around, everyone was already down, and there was no one left for another duel. Alfin appeared, asking if he intended to keep that pace so early again. She had come to say that their father was calling him, but Ash Aster noticed that she was wearing something different from usual. She always said she did not wear that kind of outfit because she was not pretty enough for it, but now she replied that balance was important for everyone, and that seeing him work so hard had motivated her as well. She also said that when he returned he would have to accompany her, and he agreed, just asking her to go easy on him. Later, in his father's office, Ash Aster asked why he had been called. Highfried told him to sit down, saying it was a serious matter. It had been 10 years since he was adopted, and the Viscount had been waiting for the right moment to hand that over. Then he placed the house ring in his son's hands, the symbol that would prove he was the direct heir. Highfried explained that their territory was in a delicate situation, that although they were a branch family of the Elmheim, they still governed lands and had much to protect, and that they could not leave the position of heir vacant forever. Ash Aster asked if his sisters agreed with that. Highfried replied that they were at the Knights Academy, and that when they returned, he would tell everything at once. Ash Aster thought of Marfa and Kudo, and commented that Kudo would certainly be furious, since she already disliked him for being born male and for carrying the 7 wings. Even so, he returned the ring, saying that he could not accept it. He admitted that he still did not fully control his own magic, that he had once been immature enough to almost kill his own sister, and that he did not have enough confidence to take on that position. Highfried then said that sometimes he wondered if he really was a child, because he spoke with too much maturity. He commented that the ring seemed like too simple a reward for what he had done at the sword dance, and decided to offer something worthy, something he would truly desire. Ash Aster was shocked when he saw the magic-devouring sword, one of the only blades capable of withstanding and controlling the power of 7 wings. Later, they went to a secluded spot in the forest. Ash Aster commented that if it was just to test the sword, the training field would be enough, but Highfried said it was only a precaution, since things tended to break when it came to his son. He explained that it was a legendary blade, passed down to the elder members of the Elmheim family for generations, and that he had brought it from the main house. When he removed the bandages with his teeth, he revealed that the sword had no physical blade. When he channeled magic into it, a red blade of pure power formed. Highfried explained that the sword depended entirely on the wielder's magical potential, and as he increased the concentration even further, he unleashed a strike that reduced trees and rocks to dust. Even so, he warned that it was a dangerous weapon, because if the user had little magical power, it would drain all their vitality, being considered cursed. A bit hesitant, Ash Aster took the sword to test it. When he infused it with the power of the 7 wings, the golden magic flowed far too intensely, and a pillar of light shot into the sky, cutting through the clouds. The knights in the distance were confused, asking if that was a comet, but another replied that it was the opposite, since the energy was rising from the ground to the sky. Alfin commented that it was certainly Ash Aster's doing. He replied that it was definitely a good sword, and Highfried stated that what was extraordinary there was not the blade, but his son's own power, because no one in the family's history had ever carried a symbol with 7 wings. He told his son that if he mastered that power, he would become stronger than him, and even stronger than Roderick, but he also made it clear that as things stood now, that power was too great for his body. If people discovered that he possessed 7 wings, they might envy him, hold resentment, try to kill him, or even capture him to turn him into their own swordsman. To prevent anything like that from happening, he needed to become stronger. Ash Aster held his father's hand and thanked him, understanding that it was true. He needed to grow stronger to survive. No matter what happened, he would master the 7 wings. 3 days passed and the sisters finally returned from the academy. Kudo was the first to open her arms to hug them, but the younger ones ran straight to Marfa, saying she always messed up their hair when she hugged them. Kudo replied that she did not do that anymore, because she had completely mastered a knight's etiquette and would never repeat that mistake. But when she hugged Alfin, she ended up messing up her hair completely all over again. Marfa asked where Ash Aster was, and the Viscount replied that he was focused. In fact, he was training the use of the cursed sword. Even after so much training, he still could not form a stable blade. Either he did not supply enough magic because he could not control it properly, or he overdid it and ended up blowing everything up. He found himself wondering how his father made it look so easy. Then Kudo appeared, saying he was pushing himself again as always. She commented that her ill-mannered brother had not even gone to greet her after she returned, asking if he thought he was that important. She also said she had heard about what happened at the sword dance meeting, and that the academy was full of gossip about him, and that their father must be very proud. Ash Aster replied that, in truth, she was the one drawing attention. He looked at the crest on her clothes and commented that she already had an enormous number of completed missions, along with that medal that only one knight receives each year. Kudo replied that if she did not do at least that much, she could never inherit the Viscounty. Then she asked if he had refused the heir discussion to spare her feelings. Ash Aster wondered if his father had told her that and called him a blabbermouth in his mind. He said it was not exactly like that. He just did not think he was qualified. At that moment, Kudo drew her sword and said that both he and their father knew about her dream and were being cruel. Her next strike sent a tree flying toward Ash Aster, forcing him to dodge in a hurry as he asked what that was all of a sudden. She replied that she only wanted to test him after so long, but warned that the next attack would be real. He said his technique was still incomplete, but she asked if he would use that same excuse on the battlefield, reminding him that a knight must always be prepared. If he held back, she would crush him. Her first aerial strike nearly split Ash Aster in half. He knew he already struggled to control his own mana, but he had no choice. He tried to summon the blade of the cursed sword, and at the first clash between their swords, a huge explosion took over the area. In no time, just from the impact of their fight, almost the entire forest was destroyed. Kudo admitted that his skills were impressive, and that he could keep up with her sword technique, but she mocked him by saying that blade was just an imitation. Right after that, she managed to throw him to the ground, and stated that his magical power was still completely out of control. Ash Aster thought that, as always, she showed no mercy. It had been like that since childhood. Because he was the only man in the family, she always carried a certain resentment, especially since he possessed the symbol of the 7 wings. That was why she pushed him even harder. It was almost like she was his natural enemy. Her next powerful strike against the cursed sword nearly made Ash Aster give in, but Kudo declared that he was not ready to be the heir. From a distance, Marfa asked if it was really a good idea to leave the two of them alone. Highfried replied that, in their own way, they were good rivals. They might be a bit immature and irresponsible with their powers, but he did not think anything serious would happen. Marfa said she hoped he was right, but asked why they had been called back from the academy, and if it had anything to do with the succession. Then the Viscount revealed a letter with the seal of the main Elmerheim family. Highfried explained that the old man of the main family wanted to see his grandson. Marfa commented that it sounded like a serious matter. He replied that in the worst case they might end up losing Ash Aster, that is if the boy came out alive, since at that moment he was being crushed by Kudo. In the middle of the fight, Ash Aster even asked if they had not told her that he had refused the position. She replied that it only made her even angrier, and the next strike came heavy, very heavy. For Ash Aster, facing Kudo was like facing a gigantic troll. Even so, he managed to dodge at the last instant, changing the trajectory of her sword, and asked if she could not listen to him at least once in her life. Even irritated, Kudo was impressed by the dodge, and used the movement to slam the ground with full force, creating a brutal explosion that launched Ash Aster against a tree. She explained that someone who only swings a sword is third-rate, someone who can use magical power is second-rate, but someone who masters both is first class. She said she was disappointed in him. The number of wings on the emblem indicates how much magical power a person can draw out, and the difference between each wing is exponential. In terms of magic, power, and stamina, she, with 5 wings, should be weaker than him who has 2 more. Even so, he avoided direct confrontation as if he were afraid to control his own power. She asked if he did not trust himself, or if he was afraid of losing control. Ash Aster realized he had never really thought about that. Maybe he was indeed afraid to release everything. Maybe there was a block in his subconscious, preventing him from using all his power. Kudo said he had everything she had always wanted, and that if he wasted that talent and let that power rot, she would never forgive him. When she tried to close the distance, Ash Aster responded with a counterattack that opened her guard. He thanked his sister in his mind, because those words made something awaken within him. He advanced without even channeling the magical sword. Kudo knew it was impossible for his power to have run out. Not with 7 wings. He carried something unimaginable within that symbol. He still did not fully control it, but if he released everything for a moment. In the middle of the strike, Ash Aster created the blade of the cursed sword. Kudo blocked and asked if that was how he fought. He had no intention of wasting anything. That second life he had grabbed by chance, that power, that sword, that family, all of it was something he would never have obtained through effort alone. He would not let it slip away. He pressed against her block and made the blade disappear at the last second on purpose, only to make it reappear right after, and land a direct hit. Later, Kudo woke up in her own room. Marfa said she had finally regained consciousness. Confused, Kudo asked what had happened, and who had won. Marfa explained that Ash Aster had carried her back home, and only said that she had passed out in the middle of the fight, probably due to fatigue from the journey. Kudo understood immediately that she had lost. She remembered that at the moment of impact, Ash Aster had undone the magical blade. What hit her were the remnants of his magical power, and that alone had been enough to bring her down. If he had not done that, she might be dead now. She thought that he was still that annoying younger brother, even being smaller and younger. She grabbed her sword, saying she would not accept that result, and wanted a rematch. Marfa then asked if she did not know that Ash Aster had already left. Kudo did not understand. Marfa explained that he had been summoned by the main house and had departed just moments ago. She realized she would not have another chance anytime soon. soon. Meanwhile, Ash-Aster was already on his way, accompanied by his father. The Viscount explained that, besides the main Elmerheim house, there would also be elders who assist the family from the shadows, former leaders of the main house, representatives of affiliated houses, veterans, and figures of enormous influence. They are known as the leaders of the shadows. Since he was adopted, the elders had never shown interest in him, but now they had been summoned. Ash-Aster replied that it certainly had to do with the incident at the sword dance meeting. Reputation to them is worth more than money, honor, and sometimes even more than life itself. Anyone who stains the family name can be discarded without mercy. The Viscount asked where he had heard that, and Ash-Aster said he had studied the subject. He even commented that he was prepared to face a possible execution. Highfried asked if he was really fine going without an escort. Ash-Aster said yes. In fact, he had already planned to leave right after his sister arrived. He thought it was better to leave while Kudo was at home, since she said she hated him, so it would be a moment of rest for both of them. Even so, thanks to her, he had managed to improve his control over the magical blade of the cursed sword a little. He felt that now he could use more of the power of the 7 wings than before. So even if something happened, he asked his father not to worry. He was prepared to survive. Before Highfried could respond, shouts came from outside. Kudo was hanging onto the moving carriage. She kicked the door open and asked if he did not think it was cruel to leave without even saying goodbye to his older sister. She asked if it was true that he had been summoned by the main house, since neither she nor Marfa had ever gone through that. Highfried explained that he understood her concern, but he could not simply take her along. Kodo said she knew that, and that she would take care of the house while he was away, but she came to warn him that this summons meant a crisis, and that he needed to be careful. He might not even return from there. Ash-Aster said she was exaggerating, and that he would come back just fine. Kudo then told him to listen carefully. She said she hated him for being a man, for having 7 wings, for receiving special treatment, and for acting like an adult even while still a child, along with many other things. But even so, he was family. No matter who he was or how old he was, he would always be her younger brother. She told him to come back, because she would not forgive him if he did not. After that, she simply jumped off the carriage while it was still moving. Ash-Aster commented that she was truly peculiar. His father asked if she was not a good rival. In silence, he thanked his sister and promised himself that he would return. When they arrived at the main house, they were received by the guards, who welcomed Highfried and informed him that the Grand Elder was waiting. Highfried said he did not need a guide, since he knew the way, but the guards replied that they had strict orders to accompany them. This did not surprise Ash-Aster. He already expected it would not be a friendly meeting. The atmosphere was heavy, although the place brought a certain nostalgia. They passed through training grounds and corridors, always under escort. The Viscount asked his son not to lose his temper, especially that day, no matter what was said. Ash-Aster replied that it depended on how they acted. Highfried said that was exactly the problem. It was the other side, not him, which was why he was asking him to stay calm. While observing the training grounds of the main Zelnheim house, he noticed that Darius was not there. He moved forward, and had to hand over his sword. He told his father he would be fine, and that he had promised his sister he would return. The guards announced the arrival of Lord Highfried and his son. The elder commented that he had finally returned after 10 years, and had brought his grandson. Highfried replied that it had been a long time. 6th leader, or rather Grand Elder. Ash-Aster immediately recognized that figure. It was the commander of the shadows of the Elmerheim, the 6th leader and current Grand Elder, Zenith Elmerheim. He was accompanied by several family members, including some young masters who had participated in the sword dance demonstration. Ash-Aster noticed that Hodrick was not present. As if he had read his thoughts, Zenith commented that that man had too many responsibilities to deal with trivial matters. That was why the old and less important ones were handling the administrative issues of the family. Ash-Aster realized that even retired, the Grand Elder still held immense power, surrounded by loyal executives. Highfried questioned what he meant by less important matters. Zenith asked if he had not realized yet. He said he had heard that his little son had caused quite a disturbance at the sword dance festival. Highfried replied that Hodrick himself had already closed the matter. The elders argued that it did not change the fact that the reputation of the Elmerheim had been stained. Adopting a child of unknown origin had already been a mistake, and everything could have remained quiet if they had not shown their claws. They said Highfried would not leave there without punishment. That was when Ash-Aster asked what they meant by punishment, since he was the one who had done something, not his father. But Highfried immediately stopped his son from continuing. Zenith commented that, as expected, that boy lacked discipline. He stood up and said that the Elmerheim command more than 20,000 knights, but they are not a monolith. There are many people behind the scenes managing and watching everything. That was why they were all gathered there. They only wanted to confirm one thing. They needed to be sure that the boy would not become a disgrace to the family. Then he offered a sword to Highfried, asking if he remembered it. It was with that sword that he himself had paid for his mistake when he failed to protect the royalty and stained the family name. Hodrick had cut off his arm with that blade. Now Zenith said it was time to cut off the boy's head. Highfried refused without hesitation. He said he would rather give his own life in his place. He would never kill his own son. The elder replied that in that case they should all die. Him, his wife, his daughters, and the boy. The Viscount's house would be dissolved that very day. As the swords began to close in, Ash-Aster asked if the Grand Elder was truly that afraid. He said that all he saw there were old men hiding in the shadows, trembling. They could banish him or execute him if they wanted, but if they touched his family, it would be different. He tore off his shirt, revealing the symbol on his back. If they laid a hand on his family, those 7 wings would become enemies of the Elmerheim. They had better think carefully before making their next decision. The administrators began to murmur, asking if that was real, if it was not fake. 7 wings had never appeared in history. Zenith asked if he understood the weight of what he was showing. Ash Aster replied that he did. The more wings someone has, the more shock it causes. Is that not how it works? One of the counts in the back laughed, apologized for the interruption, and asked them to continue. Ennis explained that the wing emblem is an organ capable of generating magical power, something the spirits shared with humans long ago. By passing down that power through generations, humans had deepened that ability even further. Even so, no one had ever reached 7 wings, except for the ancestors of the Spirit Clan. Ash Aster asked if they were implying that he belonged to the Spirit Clan. The elder replied that perhaps he did. Why not? Hyfried stared for a moment, but Ash Aster answered that he did not. He belonged to Hyfried's house. His birth no longer mattered. What mattered now was whether they would be allies or enemies. He continued, saying that if he were expelled from the Elmerheim, many martial noble houses would want to take him in. 7 wings are not something to ignore. For a family that already fears internal rebellions, that could become a major threat. Instead of pushing him away, they should keep him close. He had the potential to surpass even Roderick. Ash Aster knew that. As the old man had said, the family was not a single unified block. If a rebellion arose, it could turn into a massive war within the country. He had already seen a future like that, and knew the consequences. To survive, he needed to define right there who was an enemy and who was an ally, even if it meant taking risks. The elder asked if he really thought he had that much value. There was not even proof that those wings were authentic. Ash Aster replied that they should kill him right away then. Otherwise, they might end up starting a war among themselves right there. He knew he had put Zenith in a difficult position. Then a Viscount stood up and began clapping, saying that the conversation was going nowhere. He suggested proposing a challenge to the boy. They asked Count Maze what he was doing, but he replied that everyone there was curious to see the power of the 7 wings. It would not be too late to change how they treated the boy if he proved himself. After all, they were a family centered on martial strength. Nothing was better than proving one's worth through force. Ash Aster realized he had found an ally. The elder said he liked the idea. He told the boy to follow him. As an elder, it was his duty to teach a lesson to a grandson who did not know how to speak to his elders. Later, they stood before the field of challenges. To get there, they descended through a strange elevator that led to a deep and dark pit. The elder explained that in that darkness, there were several bunkers connected by old water treatment pathways. He would have to find at least one emergency exit. But the real challenge was something else. Down there, they kept a brutal beast. The task was simple: defeat the creature and escape. The Viscount asked his son why he had done that. He said he should have kept the 7 wings a secret. Ash Aster replied that sooner or later it would have been revealed anyway. Hyfried said that this was the perfect opportunity and told his son not to lower his guard. Ash Aster took the sword, grabbed the chain, and before descending, looked for a moment at that temporary ally of his. Then he let himself drop and went down into the depths of the pit. Down there, it was absolute darkness. Even so, he could see in the dark. As soon as he touched the ground, he saw something that made him stop for a second. There was a severed head there. The elder commented from above that that boy had been given the same chance, but had only screamed and cried when he came down. It was Darius's head. The elder told him not to disappoint him as well. Right in front of that head was the creature responsible, a gigantic magical beast, resembling a lion. Facing that thing, Ash Aster thought that the rumor was true. They really kept a magical beast hidden beneath the mansion. He even felt a bit sorry for Darius. Being born in that house full of monsters could not have been easy, but he had also been born there. Without wasting time, he summoned the magical blade and within seconds sliced the lion into several pieces. He commented that Kudo was far more terrifying than that. The problem was that the creature began to regenerate. It was an undead lion, and it came back even stronger. Up above, Heimfried asked why they kept an undead lion under the mansion. The elder explained that these creatures are drawn to the smell of death. It had simply appeared there one day, thinking it would find fresh corpses, but it does not die, no matter how much it is cut or burned. So they captured it to serve as a test of strength. As a bonus, they would no longer have problems disposing of bodies. One of the counts commented that even skilled knights had struggled to capture it, and asked if the elder really intended to kill the boy. It would be a waste of the 7 wings. The elder replied that if he died there, it would mean he was weak and that the 7 wings had no value at all. Even dead, he could still be useful in some way. It might even be more convenient. Maze, annoyed with those old men, thought that Ash Aster needed to win. Down below, he attacked quickly, but he felt no real impact. It was as if his blows were not reaching the creature's essence. Whenever he struck it, the lion regenerated within seconds and came back even stronger. He knew that to kill an undead, he needed sunlight or divine power. He could use neither there. The ideal strategy would be to flee, but retreat was not an option. Without tactics, his 7 wings would mean nothing. He needed to prove his worth. Once again, he cut the beast into several pieces and hurled it against the wall, making the entire pit tremble. Up above, many were impressed by his strength. The elder, however, said it was a waste of time. The lion rose again, and with a swipe of its claw, knocked Ash Aster down. The Viscount grew worried. Maze told him not to ruin ruin the moment by trying to save him. Highfried asked if he thought he would just stand there watching his son die. They told him to calm down. The boy still had one card left to play. Even while on the ground, Ash Aster smiled. Up to that point, everything was going as planned. The creature was no longer regenerating completely. It was slower, more unstable. He summoned the magical blade again and pierced through the lion's body, concentrating more and more energy at that point. The beam of magic intensified until the beast exploded. Highfried realized that it resembled a technique he had taught his son, but far more refined. But it was not only the creature that began to fall apart. The entire pit started to collapse. The cage had already been destroyed. The elder admitted that this then was the power of the seven wings. When the dust settled, everyone wondered what had happened, where the beast was. The elder realized that the boy had dragged the undead into a vortex of magical power, grinding it down until it turned into dust. That way, there would be no possible regeneration. He wondered whether that was truly the work of the seven wings, or of the boy himself. He questioned if Highfried had done the same with his son. He replied that he had not, and that he was just as impressed as the others by Ash Aster's strength. Maze asked if he had passed the challenge. The elder replied that he doubted anyone had any objections. Then Maze shouted down, asking if he could hear him. He said he had passed and could come up, but Ash Aster replied that apparently the chain had also been hit by the attack. Then he asked if anyone had a rope. Later, the elder was in a private meeting with the boy and asked if he was sure about his decision, because there would be no second opportunity. Ash Aster replied that he had no interest in the succession battle of the main house, because the moment he was announced as a participant, it would only bring more danger to him and his family, making it clear that his place was by the Viscount's house. The elder then commented that he could not hide the ambition in his eyes, and asked if one day he would not turn his sword against his own family to try to kill Roderick, but told the boy not to get nervous for having noticed that, because he had no intention of limiting his movements. Ash Aster shot back by asking if they should not get rid of the rebels, and reaffirmed that the Elmerheim house was not a monolith, also saying that Roderick was not the most reasonable person there either. The elder explained that if Ash Aster's existence was a threat only to Roderick, there would be no problem, but if he turned his fangs against him, the elder himself, then he knew very well what would happen. As he left the room, Ash Aster thought that that old man was the true monster of the family. Outside, Highfried asked what had happened, and Ash Aster replied that they had offered him a position to compete for the succession of the main house, but he refused. Maze commented that it was a shame, because if he had been accepted by the main house, he would be living much better days. Ash Aster asked if it had been him who suggested helping him with that challenge, and Maze replied that he only did what seemed fun, but emphasized that more important than that, from that day on he was the child of the seven wings, and now everyone would be watching him. He said that the power he possessed came with a great burden and responsibility, that his name held a lot of value, and that people would start observing him both in good and bad ways. Ash Aster then asked which side Maze was on, and he replied that he was the director of the Knight Academy, and that training promising youths like him was literally his job. He also commented that that other blonde noble thought the same way, and was excited to see the boy finally arriving at the academy. Before leaving, he said they would meet again. As the Count departed, Ash Aster thought that he was an elusive and mysterious man, and that perhaps he should not consider him a 100% reliable ally. Highfried commented that he should also go home, as he wanted to tell his sisters about his performance, but Ash Aster replied that he thought his mother would faint upon hearing about all those injuries. Later, a messenger personally delivered the news that Ash Aster had passed the Elder's challenge, bringing the information to Roderick. He said he already knew the boy had been summoned by the main house and asked what exactly had happened. The knight replied that he could provide a more detailed report, but Roderick stated that it was not necessary, concluding that the seven wings truly resided in that boy. The knight asked if he already knew that, and Roderick replied that, as time passed, the balance of power would be affected because of that boy. When asked whether they should take any immediate action, he said to leave things as they were, stating that he would not be shaken by an obstacle of that level, and that there was no reason to rush. He declared that, in the near future, the seven wings would be his, and that until then, he would let the boy play and think he was powerful, until the day came when he would no longer be able to escape. He wanted to see what that baby who had escaped from him on that fateful day was capable of, the child of the seven wings. 4 years later, several knights gathered for the entrance test of the Knight Academy, and one person drew a lot of attention from the comments around him. The evaluator asked the boy to show the wing symbol, but while analyzing the record asked if he was Ash Aster Elmerheim. Ash Aster himself questioned whether it was really necessary to present the emblem, explaining that it would be a bit complicated because he would have to remove his clothes, and asked if just his face would not be enough. In the end, he managed to enter thanks to that. Suddenly, a young man named Vigor Smith approached, saying he did not know who he was, but asked if he had not come to the wrong place, stating that that field was exclusive to elite knights and that it was the selection for the Kingdom cadets. Ash Aster replied that then there was no problem and turned his back to leave, but Vigor told him to wait, saying that everyone there had worked very hard to reach that point, and that they all dreamed of following the glorious path of the elite, being equal until they passed the test. He also provoked him by asking what kind of little sword that was at Ash Aster's waist, saying it looked more like a child's knife, and that he was not a swordsman worthy of being there, telling him to go back home if he was was lost. The people around commented that it was that Smith again, always causing trouble and repeating the same thing every year, but they also said that this time he was messing with the wrong person. It was the boy from the rumors, Ash Aster, the one with the 7 wings, and Vigor became confused upon hearing that, wondering to himself who that brat was. At that moment, one of Ash Aster's cousins approached, a man named Gurion Elmheim, saying it had been a while, cousin, since no one seemed to know exactly when or where he had been born, and he took the liberty of calling him that. Ash Aster simply commented that it was a shame what had happened to Darius, but Gurion replied that there was no reason to feel anything for him, because he was a disgrace and a shame to the family, even saying that they were better now that he was gone. Since being 1 year older, he thought he was the boss of the place, and ended up getting what he deserved. Gurion also said that he did not know whether the rumors about the 7 wings were true, but advised that no one should underestimate him, because no one there would be able to protect him, making it clear that it was not a friendly conversation. Around them, one of the knights commented that there were 2 members of the Elmheim family present, and that the exams that day would be intense, since the main house and the branch families were in a fierce dispute, and no one wanted to be dragged into it. Vigor, who was listening to everything, directly asked if Ash Aster was from the Elmheim family, and he replied with a calm smile that he was just Ash Aster, and that he was fine, senior. Later, already at the first exam site, a knight congratulated everyone for making it that far, and said he wanted to express his gratitude for their courage and patriotism, explaining that the knights of the kingdom were different from the provincial knights who infested the countryside, because they served directly under the king and the nation, protecting that place. He informed them that the first test would take place on a battlefield where they would need to show their true worth. Ash Aster found the speech somewhat ridiculous, but he had finally made it there, on that tortuous path to becoming a knight of the kingdom, something he had not been able to achieve even when he was Ash Aster in his past life. It was a world of the strong that he had never been able to reach, no matter how much he tried, and at the top of that world still reigned Roderick Elmheim, the supreme commander of the Kingdom Knights. Even so, Ash Aster promised himself that he would reach him in a short time, but he knew he needed to take it one step at a time, and for that he first had to pass the entrance test. As soon as the knight started the trial, one of the participants behind Ash Aster was struck by an arrow lodged directly in his skull, catching everyone by surprise. The instructor announced that that was the first challenge, the arrow tower, and that only those who managed to survive until the end would pass. The arrows began to be fired non-stop, killing candidates all over the place, while the desperate tried to dodge amid the chaos, with blood spread across the field, some trying to block with their swords, others throwing themselves over bodies and using the dead as shields. The instructor commented that the veterans already knew what to do, but even so the survival rate was only 30%, explaining that superficial countermeasures would soon reach their limit, and that he only wanted to see those who truly deserved to survive. In the middle of that hell, Ash Aster remained standing still, and Vigor shouted, asking what he was doing and if he had frozen in fear, while Gurion thought that at that pace he would end up turning into a sieve. Then Ash Aster drew his sword and created a magical vortex, and a beam of light cut through the sky while all the arrows were deflected instead of hitting him. With the sword raised, he said that he was ready, and the vortex continued swallowing the arrows one after another. Vigor was shocked, asking what kind of monster that was, while the instructor realized that he was spinning the sword to create an airflow capable of altering the trajectory of the projectiles, demonstrating refined control over his own magical power. It was as if Ash Aster were the eye of the hurricane in the middle of the storm. When the first part of the test finally ended, the instructor commented that more people than expected had survived, but that it changed nothing, and he congratulated all those still standing, telling them to take a good look at the bodies around them, because those who were still alive had passed. He said there was no time to waste, and ordered them to follow him to the next stage. As they walked, Vigor commented that that instructor was a demon, because he had not stopped talking for even a second, even while everyone was being shot at. Ash Aster asked if Vigor was already exhausted, calling him senior, but Vigor replied that the strange one was him, far too calm in the middle of all that. The instructor noticed that Ash Aster showed no sign of fatigue, even after using so much magical power, and became curious to see how the boy of the 7 wings would perform in the next challenge. Meanwhile, Gurion watched closely, as he had received a direct order to prevent Ash Aster from becoming a Knight of the King, a task that needed to be fulfilled for the future of the Elmheim family. In the next challenge, the instructors handed out identical swords to everyone, ensuring equality, and Vigor complained, saying he did not remember anything like that from the last time. Ash Aster asked if it was different, and Vigor explained that it might not affect most people, but those who had a really good sword, like him, would have to be more careful now. Then Gurion appeared, praising his cousin for doing well, and mocking him by saying he had even adopted a pet, pointing at Vigor. Irritated, Vigor asked who was being called a pet, but Gurion fired back by asking if he was not the heir of Baron Zenith, advising him to be careful not to step on the wrong person's tail. After all, he was just a third-rate noble from the countryside. Vigor immediately apologized, calling him young master, and Gurion pushed him away from Ash Aster, making it clear that the atmosphere there was far from friendly. Sensing a bad feeling, Ash Aster heard the instructor step onto the platform and explain the rules of the second stage. The first phase had been focused on individual defense, but now they would work in teams, divided into 3 3 groups that would compete in the forest. Each camp would have a flag, and occupying the platform with the team's flag would count as control. The team that occupied 2 or more camps before the night bell rang would win. Actions that disabled their own flag were forbidden, but aside from that there were no restrictions, and the swords they had been given were a clear sign that they could kill. The teams were announced, with Gurion and his allies on the red team, one of the notable young masters on yellow, and Ash Aster together with Vigor on blue. When the smoke signal rose in the forest, marking the start of the second stage, Ash Aster quickly understood the dynamics, because each camp had 3 flags and to win it would be necessary to capture at least 2, including their own. Vigor asked if only one team would pass, and Ash Aster confirmed, realizing that the blue team was clearly worried, since they would be facing the main house of the Elmerheim directly. Vigor explained that the fear was real because Gurion was vindictive, and even though it was just a test, pointing a sword at him could mean never again being proud to be a knight, or in the worst case, being killed and having their family slaughtered. No one wanted to become an enemy of the Elmerheim. When Ash Aster asked if he was giving up, Vigor replied that it was just a test, and that he would not risk his life, that he could try again in the future, saying that Ash Aster would probably never understand the feelings of the weak. In the end, Ash Aster was left almost isolated in that team battle, but he understood what they had said. He had gotten used to that reality, and almost forgot that. For the other knights, the Elmerheim house was a superior existence, a tyrannical clan that could not be challenged without retaliation. Gurion was a living symbol of that reign of terror. Thinking about the companions who had backed away out of fear, Ash Aster realized that from their point of view, he was just another Elmerheim, and no one there had any idea of his true story or what he had gone through. While reflecting, he walked through a quiet part of the forest and noticed that it was too silent, wondering if no one had engaged in combat yet, or if they were just waiting for the right opportunity. As he passed by one of the camps, he was approached by a blonde boy with light eyes who commented that he was smart because he had predicted exactly the path Ash Aster would choose. Faced with that, Ash Aster wondered who had sent that guy and why he was carrying his own flag like that, as if he had been waiting specifically for him. The blonde boy simply dismantled the flag of his own yellow team, revealing that that camp had already been taken by the red team. Ash Aster realized too late that it was a trap set by his cousin Gurion, who declared that he would show him how to truly fight, saying that this was how the Elmerheim house handled things. The second stage of the test was based on offense and defense, with 20 participants divided into 3 teams, and the victory condition was to occupy 2 or more bases by the end of the exam, which meant placing their own flag in the enemy base. Confused, Ash Aster asked the blonde why he was doing that, if he was from the yellow team, and the boy replied that it was simple, because he had formed an alliance with the Elmerheim family in the name of victory. The instructor, observing everything, recognized him as the legitimate heir of the Nolan house, Christopher Nolan, owner of 5 wings. Even overshadowed by the boy of the 7 wings in the first stage, he had also stood out, and the 2 of them had been the only ones to pass the arrow tower without changing their expressions. They were 2 rare talents, but they knew that only one could advance. Ash Aster questioned that alliance, saying that only one team could win, and asking if he understood what he was doing. Christopher stated that the main family would win, and revealed that, at that moment, his allies were already attacking the blue team's base. If that were true, it would be a huge problem. Ash Aster asked if he was being threatened, but Christopher replied that no one stands in front of charging horses on purpose, explaining that the nobility of knights was a hierarchical society, and that he was simply following the natural flow of that environment. Then he struck with such force that he almost broke Ash Aster's sword, who suspected that the instructor might have deliberately handed out a defective blade. Christopher stated that even though he was allied with the main family, that duel was only between the 2 of them, and admitted that he had never liked the Elmerheim very much, especially the arrogant type that loved to show off. In the next strike, Ash Aster's sword was completely shattered, but he reacted by throwing the broken tip, which was still blocked. Without wasting time, Ash Aster retreated and said he would settle that later, because first he needed to win the test. Upon noticing the fragile metal of the blade he had destroyed, Christopher realized that something was wrong, and began to suspect the intentions of the Elmerheim family. When Ash Aster returned to the blue team's camp, worried about his companions, he found the base already taken over by Gurion and his team. His cousin commented that Christopher Nolan had barely managed to hold him back, and that he had expected more from that boy. But now all 3 bases were already under control. When he asked what had happened to his allies, Ash Aster was caught off guard when Vigor pressed a sword against his back, saying it was nothing personal, but that he would never side with someone who challenged the Elmerheim family. Gurion reinforced that even third-rate knights still had enough sense to know whom to obey, and that true power was what mattered. Ash Aster asked if they really thought they could defeat him just with numbers, but Gurion replied that he was mistaken, because he had already won. The condition for victory was to control the bases, and it was enough to hold him there without needing to defeat him. If he escaped and retook any base, the other teams, allied with the main family, would simply take it back. With that alliance between the 3 teams, there was no way to lose. Faced with that, Ash Aster declared that he could stop them, even if he had to kill everyone there. Gurion laughed and said it was just a bluff, reminding him that his sword was broken, and that it did not matter if he had 7 or 10 wings, he would not win in that situation. Ash Aster then raised the broken sword, and replied that he was impressed with his cousin, admitting that he had had acted better than expected. Gurion, confident, was absolutely certain that he had already secured the victory. Ash Aster tells Gurion that revealing himself was a mistake, something he had thought about more than Gurion could imagine. Gurion smiles, convinced he has already won the fight, but then Ash Aster dodges the attack and lands a solid kick on Vigor Smeets, sending him flying as his sword falls. Ash Aster quickly grabs it and unleashes a powerful strike toward everyone surrounding him. He tells Gurion that showing himself to him was indeed a mistake, just as he had thought, and that he had crossed the line and would now lose. Ash Aster creates a whirlwind at his feet to propel himself upward, and Gurion exclaims that it's impossible. How could he jump that high? But Ash Aster replies that Gurion is simply too slow, nothing more, and swiftly delivers a direct strike to his sword, shattering it. Ash Aster recalls the first time he flew through the sky. It was a sensation he felt so vividly precisely because he was originally wingless, a feeling of omnipotence as he manipulated magical power. He tells Gurion that having wings is a good thing, and tells him to look closely at that wall that once seemed so high. On second thought, he says, it's actually quite low, and he is about to pierce his cousin. Then a massive explosion erupts at the scene. Vigor Smites wonders what kind of battle this is, and what could have happened between them. As they look toward the horizon, they see Ash Aster carrying his cousin, completely battered. Still on the ground, Gurion demands to know why they are just standing there watching, and orders everyone to move and kill him, as it is a command from House Elmheim. Vigor Smeets tries to approach and retrieve his sword to attack again, but Ash Aster asks if they are really that afraid of retaliation from House Elmheim. Vigor Smeets confirms it, saying his family is only a third-rate noble house that could be wiped out with a mere breath. If House Elmheim wished, they could crush them like ants. And for failures like them to survive in this world, no matter how pathetic it may seem, they have no choice but to obey and avoid offending their superiors. He adds that someone like Ash Aster, who has everything in life, could never understand that, but Ash Aster simply smiles. Vigor Smites asks why the hell he's smiling, and Ash Aster replies that his sister once said something similar, that he couldn't understand the feelings of those who have nothing. He had his own counter-arguments, but the fact that he is now blessed is undeniable, and that is precisely why there is still something he can do. He declares that his enemy is House Elmheim, and if they cannot change things, then he will change the arrogant and tyrannical House Elmheim himself. He will crush them all. This shocks everyone present. Gurion questions what he is even saying, and Vigor Smeets asks if he truly understands his own words. Ash Aster says yes, he understands perfectly. No matter how much you flatter House Elmheim, what awaits at the end of such devotion is only betrayal and a miserable end. If you hate that, then your only choice is to fight. He explains that the 7 wings he carries on his back are power meant for that very purpose. He tells them they must choose now, him or Gurion, whose side they will stand on. Everyone falls silent, deep in thought. Gurion tells him to shut up, saying something like this could never be allowed, and that he will remember every face and name if they betray him now. They all know the kind of hell they would face if they did. But Vigor Smeets simply drops his sword and asks Ash Aster if he will truly crush them. If that only raises their hopes and nothing changes, he will hold a grudge against him. Ash Aster calmly replies that yes, he promises. Then Vigor Smites declares his name as he raises the blue banner, stating that he will support Ash Aster. Everyone is shocked, and with that Gurion's plan collapses. Naturally, Gurion is furious, believe it or not, calling them country bumpkin monkeys. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe. This work is very good, and I personally want to bring more of it. If you like it,